Earth Angel, Earth Angel. That's right, T.R. Davis of Earth Angel Mushrooms. I bet you thought we didn't talk, being competitors in the block industry. Well, you guessed wrong. So here he is for our 10th episode to wrap up season 1 of the MycoWizards podcast. The video is a rad component to the whole thing, but it entertains this whole fucking stupid side that just is so hard to control. So,
like what? What do you mean?
Like like with the fucking
the
delays.
technology part?
Yeah, man. It's just and the fucking the audio comes out fucked up. Everything comes out fucked up. So at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I should just go back to doing it this way. So I got the beginning of that, but yeah, I do want the whole story. You know, this is like sort of one of those long-winded escapade shows, and I think one of the coolest responses that I get from people who actually listen to it are they're like, every fucking Friday, man, I just put on MycoWizards and go into the lab and I feel far less alone, you know? And I don't mean it from like a crazy ass self-help standpoint, but you know, like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
It's like people are fucking, they're terrified to keep going, but they're terrified to stop. So it turns into this like thing that really is a support system for them. And I think a lot of people don't even know that you and I talk, you know, they just assume we're like competitors and
that's good. That's good though.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Until now.
Until now. Yeah. We should talk about it. Hey, are you going to publish this? Let everybody know we talk.
Yeah,
we talk. We let all those guys that don't want to pay. Yeah. Everybody knows.
You're on the fucking shit list, all right? I know, but that's like, for a while, I was like, man, I can never have TR on this because we really do have this back and forth, which, you know, is just out of respect. It's like, dude, don't get bunked by these fucking assholes who really don't want to pay.
Yeah, man.
And that's like integral.
But here's the thing. People, you got to realize, or if they think that we don't talk or that we don't know each other, they're not familiar with the industry yet, because the industry is so small. The industry is so small that like you can't go around screwing people because it's so small. Of course, we talk. Of course, we know each other, you know?
Yeah, I think it's the people who jump into it hot, like, you know, buy out another farm or right now, especially with the cubensis thing, they're fucking just going buck wild and they don't realize that there's a whole industry already here doing exactly like I keep getting calls from people who are going to buy Sioux boilers and it's all cubensis growers. And I'm like, what the fuck? There's like 10 of them.
That is, it's the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, all of those people that are jumping in, or sidebar on psilocybin mushrooms, or all those people that are jumping in, what they don't realize is that there won't be a small or very big of a small scale, or I don't think, psilocybin mushroom industry, even when it takes place, considering that one agaricus farm could convert one room of their, let's say that they have 50 rooms, you know, which would be a medium scale agaricus farm. Yeah. They convert one of their rooms to one run of cubensis and they generate 50,000 pounds basically in, you know, a couple weeks. And like, they're not going to do it. Of course they're going to do it. And they're going to supply the whole country for months or a year or whatever 50,000 pounds would be. So these guys that are just jumping in thinking they're going to conquer the mushroom world, because, you know, right now the prices are the black market prices are what they are. Yeah. You know, when it enters the capitalistic society, you know, then the capitalists come out. Yeah. So it will change.
Well, and you and I have seen the perspective and the pivot of like Kennett with the Chinese shiitake logs, you know, like we've seen how fast they react and go, fuck this, you know, so they will when it becomes a sort of legal thing. Why not? You know, and then all of the small growers are kind of like, whoa. You know, that's the thing, is it's very similar to agaricus in that manner. Whereas like I think got away with it for so long and still have because of the wide amount of varieties, the differences. Yeah. And quite frankly, the infrastructure just wasn't fucking here for it. So all these small little like rats like us were able to come up and really make a dent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you've probably seen this as well, starting from where you and I started, even the small scale world is completely different now. It's completely changed. And especially since COVID hit, it doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same.
No.
There's different people. It's crazy how fast it has changed. Cause you think about it. When did we meet? Like on CMGN 5 or 6 years ago?
It was probably more than that, dude. You know, that was like 2013 probably.
I don't know how. It's been a long time. I was still eating with my hands, basically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but in that zone, like we couldn't sell. Nobody was selling blocks. Nobody even knew what fucking KSS was yet. You know, as small growers.
Yeah, blocks, and the amount of small growers was so small.
Yeah,
and now there's just, and I think the market for local mushrooms has gone astronomically more. There's way more demand than what there was even a couple of years ago, and then COVID hit, and that changed a large portion of people to want to buy more local, whether it be I know some people that do cattle, and they started it was off the chain selling direct to the public that wanted local stuff, and that applies to mushrooms as well.
Fuck yeah,
which is good for everybody, because, you know, you've probably heard me say this multiple times, is that I always thought if you don't get to be big scale, you're done.
Yeah.
Whereas especially after COVID, I'll say I was wrong, because there's a lot of people that are being successful with a small, like a business model that is selling locally.
Especially because of the fresh factor, you know? And well, it's a valid perspective to admit to change and like, oh shit, no, this can actually work, because it's the only reason like you and I are in business when it comes down to blocks or spawn. It's because there's so many fucking farms and so many people who want to do this. And it really is like getting bit by a bug. You know, I had a dude in here today who came in for like an hour consultation, just a small main farm, but like he's going from the grow tent to garage to so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic perspective for me to have, because very quickly I can change their like perspective around fruiting to make it far more efficient. And then they can get successful very fast, to be comfortable, to be able to be like, okay, I can sink more into this, you know, because it's his own money.
And think about this, like what you said. So when you and I started, and we'll talk about how like we're old salty veterans. I'm not saying that, but like
it feels
the
like
difference. The difference. There was some YouTube. There was some YouTube stuff out there, but the amount of knowledge that is given to you now is so much more. So much more now. You have just everything at your fingertips, and it's yours to lose. Whereas, you know, we're starting off, at least me, just botching everything up, just trying to fumble my way through stuff. You know, you just fail and fail and fail, and there's no one to talk to. No. But and there's still, as an industry, you know, once you get to a certain level, it's hard to find in-depth information. Correct. But hopefully by then you have the fundamental stuff down pat, which is easy to come by. Online, YouTube, whatever.
Yeah, and there's so many fucking channels now. Like I'd still always reference Michael from Southwest, because like he's killing it on the fucking channel thing. Like who the fuck just thought I'll just film my day and still work? You know, like fucking genius, man. And it really has inspired a different level of grower to look at these things.
Yeah.
And not in a predominantly like forward integrated way, like what's new, what can I innovate, but in a way in which it gives them the baseline to understand what other people are doing, which before, like, you know, you and I on the CMGN side, and even before that with the shroomery thing, it was like, you just had to fucking fuck through it and really screw up and waste a ton of money, you know,
ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of heartache, all of the above. Whereas now there's a lot more information.
Yeah, it's very true, man. Okay, so going back to that like early sort of Earth Angel stage, I just get that fucking song stuck in my head every time I say your goddamn farm's
Earth
name, dude.
Angel. Yeah,
It
yeah.
kills me.
So,
But yeah, what
um,
I know it's probably a long story, and you can choose to tell it however you want, but I never heard it, so tell away.
yeah. So let's see. I'll tell the life story where it began. So I grew up, outdoors. Always loved the outdoors. So part of it, at least in the Midwest, morel mushroom hunting in the springtime is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Um, and so I grew up. I morel mushroom hunted. Loved mushrooms. There's always something kind of fascinating about mushrooms. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fast forward through life with the same fascination of mushrooms and morel hunting. Of course, I did other things. When I graduated high school, went to the Marine Corps, got out of the Marine Corps, and then went to flight school. And flight school, mushroom experience. So the very first time I ever saw flight school was in Florida. So
Yeah.
I grew up in Illinois. And Illinois, there's no magic mushrooms.
Nah.
But I was down in flight school running on a trail. And this trail went by a cow pasture. And now keep in mind, I've always been fascinated with mushrooms. And so, of course, that intrigued me that there's a mushroom that has, a psychoactive ingredient.
Yeah.
And so I'm running. I'm like, across my mind, I'm like, I wonder if those mushrooms are out there, And so I still remember stopping and walking, and I'm, hovering over the fence. I'm still on the trail looking over the fence at these cow patties. And it just happened to be that there's all these mushrooms out there on these cow patties. Well, this was 2002. Right. So the internet is just a fledgling thing at that point. There's not, the internet was not what it was. Yeah, no, so it's like, it's not like you can, I don't even know if Google was around then. There was all the search engines. Anyway, so I grabbed a bunch of these. I was doing researching online about, what is there poisonous lookalikes? Is there this? Is there that? And I found they bruise blue. And so I, squeeze one with my fingers, and I'm like, holy shit, these are magic mushrooms. And they're everywhere. It just happened to be that it must have rained before or something, or fate led me to stumble upon these hundreds and hundreds of magic mushrooms. Anyway, so that just fascinated me more. You know what I mean? I'm like, I found magic mushrooms. And so of course life is still taking place, and I couldn't be eating magic mushrooms while I'm in flight school. And then from flight school, of course, I was flying for a living.
Yeah.
And of course I can't eat magic mushrooms then, but I had a lot of time off when I was flying for a living. And with all of that time off, I started mushroom hunting more and getting more fascinated with the whole mushroom thing, wild edible mushrooms. And so I would go out morel hunting in the spring, and then I started learning more about the other wild edible mushrooms, and chanterelles, black trumpets, lion's mane, maitake, chicken, lion's mane, all of those mushrooms. And so I ended up starting to spend a bunch of time foraging. And then I'm like, what? I started reading about growing oyster mushrooms. And so I grew some oyster mushrooms, and, it just became sort of a hobby. And fast forward, I got out of aviation. It's weird to talk about because it's like, the only thing I can say is it wasn't what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Right.
A lot of guys in aviation are as passionate about aviation as the mushroom people are passionate about mushrooms. It's like in your blood. And flying was never like that for me. It was a job. Yeah, it's a great job. The people are amazing, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do when I grew up. And so I left aviation, went back to school for a little while. But in this whole time, I'm growing as a hobby.
Yeah.
And I sort of got to the point where I'm like, I love to grow stuff. I like the hands-on, the growing, and the mushrooms are just completely different. Yeah. It's not like growing a plant. And, I've said this a million times, mushroom cultivation is the art between, or the marriage between art and science.
Yeah.
And I love sciencey stuff, love the data, statistics, all of that stuff. And I love the I love like the artistic brain in the mushroom world, on how you pick up on nuances that other people don't see, and different growers are way more artistic than others in how they can look at something, and they have these gut feelings, and that's what I call the art behind it. And then as you keep going, you get better artistry as you do it. But so from there, I went back to school for a little while, and then I was doing some aquaponics stuff for just a little while, but I was growing mushrooms on the side this whole time. Well, anyway, we had this meeting to sell lettuce that we were growing aquaponically, with a buyer of a grocery chain here in St. Louis.
Was this like a business that you were a part of from the beginning, or just working for?
Yeah. Okay. Yep. It was. We started this aquaponics thing, which was a horrible disaster, but I was still growing mushrooms. Yeah. And so anyway, the night before this meeting with the buyer, I had all of these oyster mushrooms that I needed to be harvested. Yeah. So I picked some, and I'm like, I'm going to bring these to the meeting. And I brought them to the meeting to the produce buyer. And he ended up being way more interested in mushrooms than he was the lettuce. So, and I'm like, I'm going to start growing these to sell. And that's when you really start botching stuff up, or at least I did. Because, you think you got it under control, and you don't have anything under control.
No, not at all.
And
not in the beginning.
No. And so then I, from there, still with the business, I got a little bit of warehouse space, 300 square feet, and started trying to grow them at that scale.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't long before the aquaponics thing was just, it was a disaster from the get-go. But
how did you meet these aquaponics cats? Were they just like friends of yours, or was it? How did you stumble into? I
met the guy and his wife at a aquaponics like learning seminar.
Okay.
And they happened to be close. But when that fell through, I knew like mushrooms did it for me. You know what I mean? There is in my life, I have to have some amount of challenge.
Yeah.
And that art and science thing together, and the challenge every day. There's something new every day. In mushrooms, which I need that. And I need a little bit of a struggle, you know what I mean? And there's always that.
Yeah.
It's never the same thing twice.
That's so much more of the artistic side, because that is the struggle, and it sounds ridiculous, but I've had a number of people on this podcast and recordings I've done so far who come from the same background as I do, of ultra creative, like, had sensory issues as a kid, like couldn't stop blinking or tapping their toes because they were just fucking going nuts, like with so much fucking energy, and like I still am that way. Like I'll just lie awake some nights, and I've got so much energy that I just go out for a motorcycle ride, come back, do what I need to do. And then I'm like, oh my God, I can finally go to bed,
Yeah.
So that's that artistic thing where you're just fucking gear grinding. It's not a blessing.
Yeah.
I don't think so anyways.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you.
So you just kept going, and this is like
so from there, then I sort of thought, you know what, this mushroom thing is something I want to do. I know that I'm capable. I know that if I can sell them, that I can make it a business. So it was a couple months later is when I officially formed Earth Angel Mushrooms.
Okay.
And then
was there like a push there, like after you got out of like flight land that you were like, I need to start my own business? Was there some sort of entrepreneurial thing from the get-go, or like how did you?
I've always been around entrepreneurs my whole life. Like my parents had a business, my grandparents had a business, so it was always I was immersed in that. You know what I mean? It was always something that I was around.
Yeah, it was the same thing here. Like I grew up doing all the shit that, you know, like gets tossed on a kid of entrepreneurs, you know, so you're just used to it. You're like, you work for yourself, right? That's life.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I knew that I didn't, you know, want to, the corporate ladder thing of working for somebody else, especially like I'll reference aviation. Once you get to a certain level, you know, people think that it's all awesome. And there is an awesomeness about flying, but it's literally, you're just there. You don't, once you're in the cockpit of a jet, it's all kind of the same. The airports don't change. Yeah. The experiences when you're somewhere change, but at work, you know, you don't, if you're flying a 777, or if you're flying a little regional jet, like that's what I was flying, a 50 passenger regional jet. It doesn't change. It's the same thing. There's no difference up there, and you're going to the same airports. There's no challenge. There's no, like, I mean, you're just you're in the waiting line to get seniority, and then you know you go to another airline and make more money or blah blah blah. But that
the challenge ain't there.
Yeah, I'm not a financially driven entrepreneur. That's not, I've always thought that money is the byproduct, not the main goal. Because let's be honest, if money was the goal, we wouldn't be in mushrooms. No. We would be committing all of this energy to something that is way more profitable.
Yeah.
That's way easy, that I would think of as way easier. But here we are, and it's something about the struggle and the challenge and the ever changing and the artistry behind, you know, seeing those blocks grow out and seeing them fruit and seeing, you know, when they do good, you're like, yes, I think culmination.
There's an end thing, but it's there's an end product, but the end product isn't the end goal, because it's such a wide reaching industry and directive and specialization territory that it's a fucking rabbit hole. And it's the number one thing that you just said that I bring up every time I have a consultation. It's part of the reason why I think people really enjoy this podcast, who are on the same level of us as us when it comes to the financial side not being the driver, is because if it is, you're fucking done, you know, or you're a beast and, you know, you're going to start a great giant farm, but you're not going to matter to the smaller people. And that's sort of that odd balance to keep in check when, you know, you're new and in this industry. Is just like, if money is your fucking goal from the get-go, you have so much to learn that you are going to hate yourself when you get to the end of the rainbow and you realize there ain't no money.
There is some amount of politics in the industry, and it's this laid back, everybody kind of knows each other. Everybody's, for the most part, everybody's cool with each other. Not very many, you know, and there's a kind of like politics involved that when you enter the mushroom industry, once you get to a certain level, you just kind of act and treat other people in a certain fashion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're just in it for the money, you won't fit. And when you don't fit, you don't do well because other people don't help you out. And let's be honest, every business owner in the whole world knows that most of it is relationship based. Everything's relationship based.
Yeah, you fuck a vendor over, especially for something as simple as a raw material, you're fucked. Like, So there's that stance, but then also the customer relation side, also the tightness of this industry is the TR calls Eric calls TR. Hey, this person didn't pay for X amount of days. Yeah, buyer beware. You know, it's like,
buyer beware.
Yeah,
because that smallness, you know, you don't really, even though like on paper you and I are competitors.
Yeah.
On paper we're competitors. That's what we are by definition. Yes, you sell blocks, I sell blocks. But here's the thing: in this industry, it's like, I look at it like this: I want to be the best TR I can be, and that doesn't involve making Eric less of a business person than me. So if I want to sell blocks, I do want to sell lots of blocks, but I'm not going to go out of my way to like do it in a fashion that is not fitting of the industry. You know what I mean? Or fitting of what I feel like I should act or whatever.
No,
so
for
it's like
sure.
this.
Yeah, like
so that's the industry, man.
CMGN sort of proved that in this interesting way, because it's CMGN for me is not a and for anybody listening who doesn't know what the fuck that is, this is, you know, TR's sort of now adopted brainchild of a commercial mushroom growing network group on Facebook. And it's like when everybody started peeling into that world in a very like unorderly way, but almost like cult like, when Joey was like interviewing people to bring him in. It was as if you felt like you were part of something, but at the same time, even looking at it now, like I don't, beyond some spawn and some like raw material pellet substrate, I don't really sell anything to anybody on CMGN to a mass scale. It's more just like, it is this group in which you can sort of riff off of one another business wise, concept wise, conversation wise, whatever, but we're very independent and also like supportive of one another, you know, and that's, there are some people I'm sure in that group who are not in that category, but it's just because it's grown, you know, and I think the OGs in that land of Joey and John Holiday, sort of, they've stuck it out. You know, it's funny to see how few people have dropped off the face of that. It's that was what was encouraging to me. You know, I was like, holy shit, even before I got kicked off Facebook for being the known terrorist that I am, like, you know, it was like, it was like a fucking cool thing. I was like, damn, none of these people are going anywhere. Like, they're here to stay, which is fucking cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some that have, but not near as many. I mean, you look at the statistics of a small business, you know, that, what is it? 80% in the first 5 years. Yeah. Now look at our batting average on the CMGN. It's way better than 20%. I can tell you that. It's probably opposite. It's probably there's 80% of the people that are still on there.
Yeah.
And 20% have failed. There's been some people that failed, or maybe not failed, but just decided they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, and those have been the most interesting ones too. I think it's the same people who like you just exiting the flight territory. They realize like, this ain't my fucking thing, you know, and like, it's better you realize that early before you sink too much fundage into it and you're, you know,
money and energy, and you're just like, shit.
Yeah, because this industry gobbles it up like a motherfucker. So
yeah, it does.
Well, I remember those like early CMGN days, but I remember like posting some long, like ridiculous, you know, fucking power to the mushroom grower shenanigans. But what was your entrance into that CMGN world? Because all I remember from my own was just Joey Schlegel reaching out and being like, don't you own this? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you should be on this. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, so for everybody listening, Joey Schlegel, he started it all. And he's no longer in mushrooms. He does vape cartridge fillers and all this stuff out in California. So he ended up getting out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an asshole. He's being successful doing something else.
Oh man. Good for him.
Yeah, he's doing really good. So he started it all. And there was another guy who I knew on Facebook that was growing on a small scale, who he's no longer growing.
Okay.
I don't even remember his name. And he messaged me, he's like, you should be part of this group. You should be part of this group. And I'm like, well, what group is that?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's called CMGN, yada, yada, yada. And, you know, it's just a bunch of mushroom growers. And so I became part of CMGN, and then ended up meeting Joey. And we ended up, me and Joey he's like my brother.
Yeah. What? So did you guys just meet in the hyperspace that is Facebook, or did you just, you know, ring him up and be like, man, we got to meet in person?
No. So that happened whenever my, operation flooded in 2015. I think you were off of.
No, I remember hearing about it, but I wasn't there. Yeah. I got removed from social.
Yeah. So 2000, I knew Joey from online. We had messaged each other back and forth a few times, and I think I talked to him on the phone once or twice. Well, anyway, 2015, my old op was in like 100-year floodplain. And so 3 days or so before that, they're like, we're going to have 100-year floods. And I'm like, oh shit, that's not good. But in the meantime, my current op was already in the works. It wasn't built, but it was in the process. You know what I mean? None of the ground had been broke. No ground had been broken, no nothing. And so my whole place flooded out, and I had the choice to either spend all of the money, time, and energy to get my old place back up and going, because there was 6 feet of water in there.
Damn.
So basically it would have made me start completely over.
Yeah.
And so I said, do I want to spend the money to do it here, get this place back up and going, or do I just want to wait for my new place?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what am I going to do if I wait? Well, in the meantime, Joey was going to be heading up that farm in Wyoming.
Oh, this is so post Mana mushrooms. He was going to do Windy River, right?
Yeah, Wind River mushrooms. Right. I had talked to him and I said, hey, you need any help out there? And he's like, yeah, I can use the help. And so I'd never met Joey, but he hooked me up with a job, a house free of rent to live in while I was out there in Wyoming. And then when we started working together, we hit it off and we became close. And he's literally like my brother.
Yeah.
So, and then I was out there for a year, came back to Missouri. And realistically, that was one of the very best things that ever happened to me, is my place flooding and gaining the knowledge of going to a large farm, meeting lots of people in the agaricus industry and other, mushroom farms, mushroom suppliers type stuff.
Yeah.
So it was the best thing that ever happened to my mushroom career, for sure.
That's amazing, man. Well, so the place that flooded, if I remember correctly, was the same place where you were growing, like in the black and yellow, like straw bins, right? Like the Home Depot bins.
Yep.
Right. So that was the place that went underwater. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember those days. Those were the early days of Trichoderma Davis doesn't give a fuck, because you were quite literally like putting stem butts in fucking sterile grain or some shit, and you were like, it's fucking fine.
Oh,
man.
but yeah, it's all good. You want to hear a story, and all the listeners will get a kick out of this story. Now, I just want to preface this story with, I would never in a million years recommend doing this, nor would I be able to get away with it today. Like, the mushrooms know that I know better now. They know that I know better,
dude. Yeah.
So, so that I was growing on straw, unchopped straw, and in yellow and black Home Depot bins with holes, and it worked. It worked okay. But anyway, I was making my own spawn. I say making. I have a quotation around the making part, because I was doing it in a closet, and I had a whole routine that I would spray like a whole bottle of Lysol, no HEPA filters, no nothing, but I would spray a whole bottle of Lysol in the closet, and I would go in there with a mask on, and I would do my spawn. And I wasn't good. But so anyway, I had this bag of spawn, and like, looking back, it was contaminated. Well, I was so broke in those days. I couldn't even think about. Well, I thought I couldn't afford spawn. In reality, I couldn't afford to be making my own, which is where so many people get in that trap of, it'd be so cheap if I made my own, but then you end up screwing everything up. Anyway, so I'm making spawn. I don't have spawn, right? Because I contaminated everything. And I had one bag that was the least contaminated of all of them, right? had aspergillus all over it. Like, not like hard. It wasn't like a huge section, but it had little spots, like every third grain had a little piece of aspergillus on it, God. And you could see it. And so I'm like, well, let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Because that I know is like, well, there's oyster mycelium in there. Yeah. So hopefully it can overrun this and yada yada yada. And I used all of that. I used that spawn, and you know what? none of those bins contaminated.
No
so
shit.
the mushrooms, they felt sorry for me on how stupid I was, how ignorant, and how broke and how miserable, and they let me get away with it.
Yeah, you get away with it like once in a blue moon, and you're like, "How did that happen?" You just don't. You like knock on wood and walk away.
Yeah, they're luring you in because they're like, okay, we're gonna let him get away with it this time, and then he'll do it again on a bigger scale next time, and then we're really gonna fuck him.
Yeah, that's what they do. It's crazy. I had this conversation again today with somebody I was just doing a brief consultation with, and I said something along the lines of, everybody's getting into this maitake thing. I was like, I said something about spore load, and I was like, if you're trying to go down this realm of like fruiting multiple species in one room, you really have to be aware that an abundance of spores will decimate slower growing species. And as if like, that's new knowledge, he was like amused by it. And I was like, no, quite literally, like these things are sentient to the point at which they just react, like, because A, they're being smothered, but B, it's a signal, it's like pollen, like it's anything. Yeah. So it's a very intriguing thing what you can get away with at what stages in growing. And then finally it catches up to you and you're like, Jesus. Yeah.
That's true. That's absolutely true. What if I could go back in time to some of my version of myself, 2015, 2014. Yeah. I would literally punch myself in the face 150 times because what I would be hard stood on, and you know me, and
you're a hard-headed motherfucker, dude.
Yeah, hard-headed. I'll fight anything if I believe that it's true. I'm going to be like, no, that's the stupidest thing I'd ever heard. And if I could talk to myself then, 2015 TR would be talking to 2021 TR and telling him how stupid he is. But in reality, you go through this thing and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe some of the stuff that I did. How stupid.
Right. But and none of us knew. That's the thing. And that's like the part that is different now. If you've got the balls, you can reach out to somebody in this industry, and everybody knows who we are now, like for the most part. And I don't mean that in like a mini famous way. I just mean it's a business presence that's perpetuated on the growth of other small farms, so it's a fucking option now. It's not just like signing a waiver to buy spawn from fucking Stamets and being like, I guess I can't propagate this or whatever the paperwork fucking says. It's much different now. So like we busted the fucking gates wide open in that early sort of 2015 era. But at the same time, it was a small group that decided to waste that much money to get this far ahead, and nobody was going to help us. So fuck it, dude. Yeah.
It's Michael Nail, Mile High Fungi.
Yeah. I just had him on here.
He came out here and visited one time when he was driving through, him and his wife, and the saying is he said something to the effect of failing forward, and that is the best phrase ever to represent how we all got to where we are right now. We didn't stop. We just continually failed forward until sooner or later you can afford to pay your bills, kind of. Totally. You know what I mean?
Totally. No, I remember like the first steam box setup that we had in our bright idea of like, let's just cool this inside of the steam box, right? So we hook up like a fucking HEPA filtered shop vac and just like plow it into there and out, and I was like, this is gonna be a fucking great idea, I feel like I shouldn't even cop to this in live air, right? But I heard the same concept from somebody else, and I was like, I just couldn't stop laughing. I was like, please don't do that. I was like, please don't do that. And it's like, it's hard. We're not all fucking Brad Coons with his thermodynamic math. So, we're just a bunch of fucking goobers. So we're trying to figure this out.
Meatheads. You know what I mean?
That's true though. But like at the same time, you had a great quote back then that it definitely stuck with me, something on CMGN, that it was like, as you started to figure it out, I think this is like before Windy River, or Wind River, but maybe it was right after. It was just like, if I paid attention to all the stuff that was going on bad around me, like the spent blocks and the bad spawn and the contaminated spots or the trash or the whatever, I wouldn't still be going. Because you do at some point in that growth period have to just shed all the shit and just keep going, you know, and the piles just build up, but who the fuck cares? Because the product goes out and it gets sold and the money comes back in, and then you keep going. And then as you find time, you're like, we got a Sunday afternoon, let's clean. You know?
Yeah.
That's
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was a post or what it was, but
I remember that. I mean, my old place, when I was doing everything pretty much on my own.
Yeah.
I remember my grow room would have shiitake junk on the ground, and I would not clean that shit until I couldn't stand the smell. Like I could not till I couldn't go in there till I absolutely I walked around the trash until I had time. You know, sooner or later it builds up so big that you have to deal with it. But if it didn't involve making some type of money to pay rent or electricity, I didn't do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, you see all these, like, you know, I keep telling these stories because I was part of that early, not early. I wasn't part of anything. I was stuck out there, but I was in the early Murder Mountain mushroom or Murder Mountain cannabis scene out in California without knowing it was fucking Murder Mountain. And the farms out there, amazing, because they're exactly that. They're just trash piles that are just chasing cash and crops hidden in different corners. And by the time the fucking season's over, it just looks like a fucking hoarder of a gnarly human lived there. And it's like swimming pools full of fucking dead floats, dead animals, dead fucking everything. Tarps people were like half dead and living under, maybe bodies, you know, but it didn't matter because you got the crop, you got it cured, you sold it, you made your dough, you went home, or you kept going, or you killed somebody or whatever. Yeah. Or in my case, you ran off the fucking mountain because you were terrified. But yeah, there's something to that, and I now see it. Somebody showed me like the Murder Mountain documentary. It totally gave me terrible flashbacks to that, like the worst times in my life. But I was like, oh my God, there's the trash piles. Like this is the TR thing. This is the so many people don't understand. Like you just have to keep going. Who cares about that fucking pile?
Yeah. And I think that if I could go, there is something to be said now that I'm here. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm a lot cleaner now because some of that stuff ends up backfiring to where like you get more blotch, flies everywhere. You know, It's like, so
no. Yeah. I'm referencing just in the beginning, you know, it's like, you can't, after a certain scale, you have a cleaning crew or you have people who just, you know, dedicate time to organization and to really just making our lives as owners easier and less hectic and anxiety ridden, you know, because it really is that balance.
Exactly.
So it's huge. Well, so you transitioned I remember getting a call from you because I really don't think I was on Facebook at the time. Maybe Mark was, and you were at Wind River and you wanted to buy in like an obscene amount of shiitakes, but I can't remember if you were making shiitakes before that or if you started making them after that, or what was that transition from these like straw buckets to all of a sudden you're making blocks?
That was the same time that I started trialing soybean hulls.
Okay.
So I had used straw and then I used cottonseed hulls.
Yeah.
And then the cottonseed hulls in Missouri you can't get them all the time.
Yeah.
So, hey man, I got a delivery driver here.
Do your thing. Take
pause. Can we pause and then?
Yeah. Just
let call you back.
Yeah, let your phone keep going if you don't mind. Just because I don't know.
Give me. It might take 10 minutes. I got to load this pallet.
Okay, cool. No worries.
Hold on a second. Yep. Okay. All right, you there?
I am, man. I was shoveling some rice in my gullet.
Okay.
How was that?
It was delightful.
I got to crack another beer while you were doing that, so I feel better.
That's good. Oh man.
So you're basically, wait, what's that beer?
I need a beer.
Are you a drinker?
Some, not like I used to be.
Yeah.
I'm too busy.
Yeah, I feel you, man. The hangovers get harder.
Yeah, they do.
That's why I switched to just Bud Light or Miller Light. The other night I drank too much whiskey and I think I woke up still drunk.
Oh gosh.
Dude, I was like, and it was, not that much bourbon, right? But once you get going, at least once I get going, I can't stop. And
yeah. Yep.
And
I don't do things in moderation. If I'm gonna go out and party, I'm gonna tear it up.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where cheap beer, it's like you just get too full to like get too fucked up, and you're like, all right, man, I'm just gonna go to bed. So,
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, man. Well, I wish I was closer. I'd just hand you a beer, but
yeah, I'd take one.
To you. So you're saying you were at this sort of state where you discovered the soybean hull, you were playing around with that, but you made this transition to blocks in some manner, and then the shiitake thing sort of came in line with it.
Now, I was growing shiitakes prior to that. I was growing shiitake blocks, not a lot. Like I was doing like 200 a week or something like that.
Like while you were doing the black and yellow bins, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep. But not oysters, just shiitake.
Yeah.
Fucking
fool.
And then
Jesus.
Yep. And I then switched to all blocks.
Okay.
And I had only done all blocks on everything flooded out.
Oh, 1 sec. Sorry. I got you back. Okay. So you've done a few blocks till everything fucked up, got flooded.
Yeah. A couple months, months of all blocks, and then flooded out, and then came back and all blocks ever since.
That's crazy. And that was way before Windy River. So you finally made it out to Wind River and ended up working with Joey and Brooks out there and a bunch of other people.
Yep.
And then you came back and had the next iteration of your farm, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how it took place. Next iteration. And then it's been several iterations since. It's always changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Brian Simpson was the first person I remember, like, I don't think it was necessarily him, but he was growing 3782 on like those small blocks at Sparta.
Yeah.
And Sparta was like the first time I had seen blocks like make sense. And I was like, all right, this is it, I think we made that full transition over 100%, and nobody around us did. Like Northsport was doing straw, Mousom was doing straw at the time. Eric Milligan was the only one in New Hampshire doing blocks. So it was a weird renaissance to be able to find that, even in like the old Growing Gourmet Medicinal Mushroom book, where you're like, fuck, there is a little thing about blocks in here, and supplemented blocks,
Yeah. Well, you look at the space. I mean, if you're a small grower, like we all started off, you look at the space savings.
Yeah.
And how many mushrooms you get per given square foot of grow space you have. It's just, it blows. If you're hand doing straw, it blows it away. Now, if you have compressed bales and all equipment and all that stuff, it's a different story. You can probably get good enough yields to make it work financially, but when you're doing a lot of the stuff by hand, like we all were, and you have one little grow room, there's only one option, really.
It's less and less effort to convince people to actually like do the block thing now, because that was a move for a while. People are like, oh, fuck this, man, I'll just make straw logs. And I was like, I don't see that being okay.
No, it's man, straw. I don't like straw or dealing with it by hand, but
no,
it was miserable.
I can imagine it, man. So what was your transition at this point from the CMGN world as Joey sort of like peeled out? Like, was that like an understood or like assumed thing that you would just sort of take over CMGN?
kind of, because I was heavily involved on there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other things, like I know a lot of the guys in person on there too.
Yeah.
As I'm sure you do too, but it seemed like I'd got to know some of them and all of them. It's kind of a clique, you know what I mean? Kind of my group of people.
Yeah.
And it's just when Joey left, he's, hey, I don't remember what the exact wording was, but you know, you want to do this? Sure.
Yeah.
I'll take charge. But it's not like, I mean, I think that there was a lot more information type sharing back then than there is now.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of, I think the N in the CMGN is the biggest part. You know, it's a network of people that when you do have something go wrong, you have someone to talk to, because you look at our industry is so small, and mushrooms is a $1.3 billion industry in the entire United States.
Yeah.
So just to put that into perspective, I mean, let's look at any other industry, and I have a point to all this. But you know, in the United States, innovation and all of this stuff is driven by money.
Yeah.
Knowledge in that innovation or knowledge in that industry is driven by money. So when you have a tiny industry, there's not a lot of information. There's not a lot of people you can turn to answer questions. So the people that are close to you in the industry, and it goes back to the small industry thing, that's who helps you out. When you don't know something, you call Eric or you call TR or you call whoever to help you out, because it's not like, let's look at the corn industry. You know, I'm in the Midwest, so corn and beans are huge. If you have something go wrong in one of your cornfields, all you do is pick up the phone and contact your seed dealer. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it behooves the seed dealers and the seed people or the fertilizer people or the amendment people to know lots and lots of information. And there's sub industries. You know, it's not just farming corn, it's seed hybrids, it's fertilizer, it's pesticide, herbicide, all of this stuff. We don't have any of that support. The only support that we have is us. It's not like there is endless data like there is for corn or cows or any other type of farming. So when it comes to having a group of people, and referencing CMGN, it helps, because you're like, have you ever seen this? Have you ever done this? You know, what can I do to help this? You got to be able to turn to somebody, because there's not this wealth of, you know, there's not billions and billions and billions of dollars that have supported these sub industries within an industry that can help us out. So we're reliant on each other.
Yeah, which is really why I think it's fantastic, is like, you know, Andrew Collereid pointed out to me a while back, like that we can all sort of start specializing now because of that. And I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, man, I don't know, call so-and-so, you know, I don't do the Coroplast fucking heat exchanger. I don't do the Myers bagger. I don't know, you know, fucking call them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful part to that network that, you know, you're sort of in charge of, you know, is like, they're on there and they might not be like 100% active, but they can be called on. Cause I remember a point at which, like, I think it was when Joey was in charge, he started to try to bring in these like you know, old gate, you know, keepers. And I don't know if they ever posted on there. I think they were just like invited. And then it was like, the fuck are all these little hooligans doing? Like, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were just, they were fucking beyond us, I guess, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Not now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's true, man. It's amazing. So Tyler goes over to Belgium. He learns a bunch of this shit from Magda and Casper, and we start doing spawn. And while he was over there, they were like blown away at the like high level of nutrient in the majority of like America's master mix, if you will.
Yeah.
And even like the shiitake mixes and stuff. They were like, what the fuck? So like the predominant sort of move over there is to have multiple flushes, less, you know, like input. Whereas we don't really look at it that way. And I think a lot of that is due to the just the like real estate's a premium here. I think it is there at the same token, but we just look at it differently, perhaps, you know?
Yeah.
But that sort of bleeds into, like, you know, just go for it.
Yeah, if you've looked at other industries throughout the world,
yeah,
the American mushroom industry, it it kind of is like the American style. We want fast, we want lots, we want bigger, stronger, faster as soon as we can possibly have it. And that applies to our mushrooms, because if you like, let's be honest, if you go to Japan and look at their shiitakes compared to 99% of shiitake growers in the United States, they'll laugh. They'll laugh because ours are, well, I mean, when you look at the two, any American shiitake grower can look at a picture of an American shiitake and look at a picture of a Japanese shiitake, and the Japanese shiitake looks 100 times better. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But if you put our yields up against theirs, or the time frame, or anything that you have these like these set parameters, like we want yield, we want time, we want all of this stuff, we'll blow them away. We want it right now, and we're going to destroy a lot of people in those aspects. Yeah, granted, they're not going to look as good, but hey, we're not getting paid on looks all the time. You know what I mean? So we've sacrificed some stuff, like the quality in the United States, the quality of the mushrooms, or the looks, maybe not quality, but the looks of the mushroom, for higher yield, for quicker turnaround time, I want lots of mushrooms right now. So I think that's an American industry thing over. So we have high supplementation for things, and like that strain that you guys grow of oysters. The first flush is monstrous. And it's ultra fast. That's very, very that signifies that's American. That's American. That's bigger, stronger, faster.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's not that big of a surprise that fucking we're just doing it the American way. It's yet again. Better, fuck you.
Newsflash, you're American. So that's where we sort of
jeopardize some of the art quality or the artisanal nature of this stuff for the the viability and the money. And it's a swift double-edged sword, because like the quality of the shiitakes in the Far East are far superior, but they also dry like 98% of them. So there's a different sort of like conceptual nature around reconstitution and edibility.
There is that's true. Their culture is way more, or from my understanding, the culture is way more mushroom friendly. Whereas ours, we have to twist people's arm to eat mushrooms. You know what I mean?
They're like vegan crab cakes. No, it's just fucking lion's mane. Cook it and eat it.
But you know what? If we're comparing the industries, a lot of the labor in the far east, in a lot of industries, the labor's cheaper. So whenever we're talking about, we're already paying for air conditioning and heat and the facility and everything else that's involved. And our labor is really high. So if we can sacrifice time, if we can get the blocks to grow faster, if we can get better yields. So we as a culture, I guess, have chosen to grow shittier looking mushrooms, but we get killer yields, and we can run really, really fast. You know what I mean? So
it's all the fucking strongman show here. It really is, man. That was a news flash to me that, Europe has adopted this sort of different version of things. And I think that's where Walter stands out in regards to his connection to the American side, that I'm sure 90% of it is just like he enjoys the drama and like poking fun at it and being a dick. But, but at the same time, he's getting his kicks. He's also definitely absorbing like the different facets that we're exploiting, and projecting on these sort of social media platforms. And I'm sure people take stuff away from him too. So it's a very interesting exchange that, that network has maintained its notoriety, and I feel like a weird part of being in it, because it's interesting. Like I don't know any of the fucking farms that are really active on there anymore. I'm like, man, who are these people? Not only do I just not have time to like look at my phone most days, I just like I get on there and I'm like, who is asking this question and why? never want to be a dick about it. I'm just like, what?
Yeah, me either. Me either. No, yeah, it's changed over time. You know what I mean? I see that there is like the newer. Here I'm gonna sound like the old crusty man, but it's the mentality of people now coming into it. I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bad, but I don't know. Maybe I've just been around. I'm getting crusty and old, and
no, but it's once again, it's hard to have perspective, dude. That's like half of the reason to starting this podcast is like to rebuild my perspective, keep a thumb on the pulse, and just conversate and just rationalize, like still being in this, you know. And I didn't start it for me, but at the same time, I was like, damn, I'm benefiting from this in a way in which
absolutely,
yeah, it makes you aware that whoever you've been running with, you know, the whole time in this industry, they're still there, like cranking away. And we still have the same level of vulnerabilities and finally made it through a pandemic, which is pretty epic, you know, to say for like an industry. And I'm sure any industry can say that, but we all have the same exact fucking story of like losing everything and then gaining it back pretty quick. Only some farms faltered to like the non-returnable state, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So we lucked the fuck out, but
we did.
I don't know what that says for like the future of CMGN or any of these social media networks. How many members are on CMGN now?
I think there's like 120 members, but I mean, of those, it's probably 50 or so that are active. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then there's
50 people that are
150,000 on the mushroom growing one. So it's this very odd comparison of like two different demographics.
And I mean the whole CMGN thing when Joey started it, you know, it was not made for growing mushrooms. It was made as a network of people that are attempting to be commercial. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there is definite, like the mushroom groups out there, there's a wealth of knowledge. But what I've said a million times is that of that knowledge that's on the regular mushroom groups, you know, there's so much horrible information given by anybody behind a computer that's like, no, that's wrong, or no, that's right, or this is what you should do, that you can't even weed through what's right and what's wrong because people are just talking. So with a certain amount of, and granted our limitations or whatever are to get in, to be able to get in, to be vetted, the people that are in the CMGN have a little bit more knowledge, background, can think critically. You know what I mean? As opposed to the regular mushroom groups that you don't even know what's right and what's wrong because there's so many people giving you information. And, you know, some of these people that are giving you information are growing 2 pounds every 10 weeks. And you're like, not that person might be the best grower in the world. Literally, some people that don't grow very much,
they know a lot,
can be really good. But then there's 80 other people that are giving information that don't know what they're talking about, that want to sound smarter than they are. And you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, man, to see like Kelsey, who manages our substrate sort of crew and sales and stuff. She'll dip on it from time to time, and I'll like see her comment, and it's faded over time. I'm like, yeah, you're sick of it too, huh? It's aggravating, man, because you try to offer a perspective, and like, you know, especially the wealth of people number wise, they don't give a fuck. So it'd be really interesting to like take the, you know, like screenshot entire conversations from CMGN and just post them on the mushroom growing network, you know?
I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't know, man. I'd be scared. People would be like, he said what? TR said what?
That's true. There's some pretty heinous shit in there. That's very true. I've like stayed away from so much of it, but yeah, you guys get fucking rowdy. That one post Josh made of the like nearby naturals lady was a fucking riot. Oh my god.
Which I don't even remember that
It's
one.
like the lady
There's
under
been
the
someone.
table, and she was like complaining about getting this kit. And I'm like,
Oh,
I don't know why she's under the table.
It's
She's like peeling
oh my
like pieces
god.
of substrate back. She's like, it's squishy and it's firm. Fuck you guys.
It's
I'm
great.
fucking telling the whole world about
I
your
was supposed to
mushrooms.
grow yeah, that's the drawback.
Yeah.
So you had said, like, I have a YouTube channel, you have the podcast, and you're
Yeah.
putting yourself out there in the public,
Oh, it's
and
scary.
you get destroyed by people, man. You get absolutely destroyed from some 15-year-old behind a computer at his house, and he's like, TR said this and it's completely wrong because Paul Stamets' book says this, and I'm like, motherfucker, you don't even know what you're fucking talking about. You read this and you're writing it verbatim out of a book.
Yeah.
And oh my god, yeah. So you have to have there's a little bit of having a calloused skin going on there, because you get everybody has something to say. Everybody has something to say.
Yeah.
Which makes it tough.
Man. And it's also the Stamets thing is just interesting. It's fascinating. I know I've told the story maybe once on this podcast, but it fucking blew my mind when Christopher and I decided to take our entire crew at the time, which is probably 12, 13 people, to go see, maybe more, to go see the whatever the fuck, the Louis Schwartz and Stamets movie.
Fantastic Fungi.
Yeah, we were like, most of these people don't really understand the world we're coming from, and this will be very interesting to stick them into this realm and see what happens. And none of them expected what they saw, which was obviously the shit show that was, with like a few minutes of like, oh man, look, some actual like cultivators in there. Oh fuck, that's over. Back to the psychedelic land. But the most interesting perspective was that we went on a Tuesday night, and it was during a fucking straight out blizzard, and it was packed to the fucking gills, and it was sold out for I don't know how many weeks in a row. So it proved the point that like that mushroom growing sort of social media side is exploding because of the excitement for it. So everybody in the background doesn't mean it's going to like grow the industry as a whole, but it's definitely going to grow the interest, which, bulks up everybody who's in the CMGN world,
Yeah. Helps everybody.
Yeah.
The more interest there is. And like we said earlier, I've seen the change over time. If I could enter the market now knowing what I know, it'd be so much easier. So much easier. Because there's more interest in mushrooms, just more interest in mushrooms across the board.
Yeah, it's far less difficult to sell the fucking things, and it's interesting to watch the farms that get so big that they just go direct to distributorship or, retail whole food stuff, and they forget everything that's in their path that they sort of left behind, and they don't realize all the small mushroom farms like scrambling to pick up their, like spent, restaurant accounts,
scraps,
or whatever.
Yep.
And there's viable businesses within that. So it's really crazy to have that perspective we have.
Way more now than what there was.
Yeah.
Like I had said earlier, that thinking that you have to be big, whereas, I've been proven straight up wrong, because there's multiple businesses that their business model is farmers markets and restaurants, and it's big enough now to where people are being successful doing it.
Yeah, it's very true, man. Yeah, they are, and it's exciting to watch. Like when we came up to Gardner and we're like, we're just gonna do the block thing, I guess, even though we had all the plans to build all the fruit rooms. We did not expect any of these block customers to stick around, and they just kept ordering, and we were like, what the fuck? We really didn't see that coming, and it just proves the point that it was the right time, right place, right model and pivot to push into that world. So it is very exciting to see, but it's also we'll see where it goes.
The whole block thing, you look at the worldwide industry, and buying agaricus compost, buying blocks is way more common outside of the United States. The United States is the one that people were still attempting to do it, and it hadn't split into multiple, the sub industries.
Correct.
Whereas Europe, lots of people buy blocks in Europe. Lots of people buy compost in Europe. And you have the substrate companies, you have the growers, you have the substrate companies, you have the spawn. And it's all split up. And I am a firm believer that you are way better at doing something when you do a few things. Now I see, and one thing that I do disagree with that I see in a lot of the small growers is they try to grow 10 different strains or 10 different varieties.
Yeah.
And they're trying to grow pink and gold and all these varieties. And you can never get good at something if you don't do something. You can't do everything. And the longer you're in this, the more you realize that you make what you do smaller, and you get better and better at that, and you take on one thing or two things, and you're better at them than most people. Because the 10 different varieties, you can't grow 10 different varieties to their best, and you can't be your best as a grower or a person doing that if you're splitting yourself between all of these things. So then back to the substrate spawn and all this stuff in the other countries, that I see it going more that direction here.
It's swiftly happening. Like, and you and I have had this conversation when it comes down to like, it's the hardest thing to want to propel the industry forward and have the same network and support system and brain space. But the reality kicks in when you've been fucked over a couple times financially, and you realize what a hard hit it is.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you and I prevent that from happening to one another as best we can. But at the same time, it's interesting that we've all sort of like coalesced a little less heavy than the fucking Lambert boxes that just say, like a, disclaimer of 300 words that basically say, fuck yourself. We're not quite there, but it's the next step is really like making farms aware that like, look, we put all of this money, effort, infrastructure, and everything in here to meet you halfway. Pay for the fucking thing. Yeah. And then you get payment after you put all in the fucking effort to fruit it out. Yeah. It really is meeting in the middle. And I think that is something that has to be established and understood instead of like just, harped on as like, you guys fucking give me fucking terms. I'm like, you are nobody. You are not getting terms. Nobody knows who you are, and I don't mean that in a dickish way. It's like, fuck. Yeah. And people might, we're going on a rant here. Yeah, so I'll keep it going. I'll keep it going. Okay. So, you start off and people that are listening to this should listen to what we're saying, because you start off and it's all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns jumping around and everything is great. And you have this for us, like someone places an order for blocks and they say, I want 50 pink and 75 gold. And 72. You're like, sweet. Sweet. I'm going to sell them all these pinks. They're really easy. And then when reality hits this person who wants these blocks, and they're like, well, now I can't sell all of them. So what do? They call and say, well, I don't want them. I can't sell them. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to sell the blocks that you had me do for you? That's not how this works. So you do stupid business things when you start off. Yeah. And usually they can either listen to you and me or people that have more experience, or hopefully there's a mentor in their life that can teach them this before it happens. But usually, at least for me, is someone stiffs you initially, and then you're like, oh, that sucked. And you do it again because you think, well, that's just a fluke. But it's sort of, you can make good decisions and you can prevent a lot of being stiff. Now you are going to get stiffed. You are going to get screwed over. It's business. Yeah. But if it happens. You're going to piss people off. I'm going to piss people off, and people are going to piss us off. So, and that's just how it goes. But if you can keep all of those things to a minimum, a lot of that can be circumnavigated by making good decisions. And one of the good decisions, like you were just saying, is, hey, you either pay me up front or I'm not doing blocks, period. I'm not in the business. Hugs, not drugs, but hugs don't pay the bills. My electric, hugs. When I go to my electric company, and I say, hey, this guy he couldn't sell these pink oyster mushrooms that he wanted me to make. Could I just pay you
can I pay this electric bill in pink oyster blocks?
Yeah.
No, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about mushrooms. They just want their money.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why that there's this difference in, I don't need them anymore.
Well,
so you change.
Yeah, there's this like draw to the, I won't name names here because I respect them, but I have this like real like laughability when it comes to the alternative commerce cats who are like, dude, we can trade everything, bro. We can trade light for hearts and fresh mushrooms for electricity and like, okay, no, it doesn't work that way, man. And the rest of the world doesn't give a fuck about your sentiment. So your job is to keep people employed or keep the bills paid, and like fucking deal with it. You're in the game.
And it's hard. And man, but you set yourself a lot of it. And over time, like you were saying,
you learn to
how being hard stood on things like, you reference Lambert spawn, it is if we send spawn, it doesn't matter. And they're straight up, straight to the point, that this is not, we don't cover it if we ship it UPS, if something happens. Why? Because UPS has a bunch of gorillas throwing around boxes.
Yeah. They don't.
So they already know that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but they already made the spawn. They already had their, all of these people they've employed. It's when something ships, it's not on them.
No.
And it's not on us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing that I've gotten a little lenient about, like in recent years, I guess, or recent months, I guess, maybe, but it's really like new customers, just making them abundantly aware that like, where's my pallet? Fuck if I know, like, what do you mean? Where's my pallet? Call the fucking company. Like, and it's not to be a dick. It's just like, what do you think? I don't own the fucking shipping company. Like, that is the one thing I cannot control. And like, we're trying to create alternative products and options and forward integrated, sort of systems to be able to give you a little bit more onus and control. But at the same time, there's always the outliers, it's always the outliers. Yep. But, you look at the alternative and you referenced Europe and like, look at CNC Exotics. They plan out 6 to 12 months, if not longer, in advance with their customers. They don't fuck around with anything like we fuck around with at all. Yeah. They say, you want blocks? Give us 12 months of production. Pay us. We'll send it to you. They don't give a fuck. Yeah. And they plan years out in advance, whereas we all plan like a couple months out in advance. So it's kind of enlightening and exciting to know that like the alternative is out there in the specialization sector that makes it a little more like flying, might be a boring sort of alternative, but we have the perspective that like Wouter has that, this is kind of what Europe has become, this like fragmented version of specialization, which that's sustainable in terms of a financial model, especially by sussing out the people who are just going to fuck it up anyways.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's definitely important.
I'm with you.
And this totally isn't talk trash on customers at all. It's quite literally to just be like, don't get into this if you're unaware of the responsibilities, on you.
And my thing is, if people are listening to this that are getting into the business, because they're obviously listen to more experienced people in the industry. Yeah. The thing, my whole thing is, if I can help them not get screwed over or learn from all of the meat-headed things I've done over time. And one of them is being too lenient in how you go about, money collections. And I've set myself up in the past for complete failure. And when you get screwed over, my landlord, the guy who bankrolled my whole operation here, and you know how I've spoken over the years. I'm very direct to the point and yada, yada, yada.
That's what I like
but
about
he's very much like that. And the first time I got screwed over, it was for like $5,500, and I'm complaining to him. He is a business owner. It's been in business for like 40 years, and he's like, what'd you expect? Yeah. He's like, what'd you expect? That's called the dummy tax. You're having to pay the dummy tax because you made a stupid decision. Why would you offer them credit? And, so it goes back to hopefully these people listening. it's cool to be nice and all of this stuff, and I try to have a decent relationship with customers. I'm not talking smack about customers, but some of them are going to screw you over. Others will screw you over, but it's not intentional. Some very few people will intentionally screw you over, but you still have to watch. You still have to watch out for both, because you still have to pay the bill. You still have to pay the electric bill.
Yeah, you and I have seen it both, man, and it kills me now. And this is where, you know, you and I have gone back and forth on this concept of like a blacklist, because it doesn't feel good to want to put these things together, but it fucking sucks. And it really does like hurt at the end of the day. And I lose sleep over it when somebody reaches out and say, hey man, I sold, you know, blocks to these people. They feel weird reaching out. Like they feel like they're a competitor of some sort. And I'm like, dude, you make money how you make money. That's great. And they're like, have you ever dealt with this customer? And I say, yeah, you shouldn't have. And they say, well, I'm fucked. And I say, yeah, you're fucked. You know?
Yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah, and it sucks, man. So, but at the same time, you know, heavy lies the crown for the person who wants to fucking say, fuck so-and-so, do not sell to them on a public platform. You know, it's almost not within our nature, you know?
Yeah, it's hard. That's the thing. You know, I go back and forth, like we had talked about before, on, you know, do you make a list public of people that have screwed over multiple people, that have a track record of making poor decisions? And I'll go back to saying that most people don't intentionally screw people over. I don't know if anyone has ever got blocks from me and said, you know what, I have no intention of ever paying for those blocks initially. You know, whereas you still get screwed either way. But those people, you know, is there any like redemption? Will they end up paying? Will they end up making better decisions down the road? And would that, making that person public, would that jeopardize that in the future? Maybe I'm just being too nice and naive or whatever.
No, but it's self-preservation, like at some level too. And this goes back to business in general, and like saying, yeah, you're a dummy. $5,500, fuck you, move on. You know, like that's the thing, is like all of us are like, we're fucking submit it to small claims court. No, you don't. You wipe your ass with it and use it to write off taxes.
Yeah,
that's
because
not
here's
saying
the thing,
come screw me over. It's just saying that's what you do. You know.
Yeah, and people think, like they say, people that are not in business, they'll use the small claims court thing. You're like, newsflash, small claims court doesn't miraculously get you money. It doesn't get you money. It says the same thing. It says the same thing that the invoice does. It says that Joe Schmo owes TR Davis money. It's a judgment. The judge said, yep, he owes TR money. And it says the same thing, the invoice. Yeah, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. They're not going to send the police to go get it. That still means that person has to give you money. That's the same thing the invoice says. It doesn't mean they're going to pay you. Small claims. Get the fuck out of here with that small claims shit. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
You get me fired up now, man.
Oh, that's good. I need you fired up.
Whenever I hear people talk about small claims, I'm like, you know what? You don't know what the fuck is going on in the business world, because that shit doesn't mean anything. It just means that you have to, you have to lose more sleep about it. You have to leave work and go to court and listen to the judgment that already says the same thing that the invoice says, is that they owe you money. It doesn't mean you're not going to walk out of there with a check and be like, oh, look at this, we're going to get steak tonight. No, you've lost more sleep. You've lost more sleep over this. That's all it says. That's all it means.
It's true, man. I mean, that's where you just hold the fear, right? It's like, that's the tact. You either get prepayments or you hold the fear. And it's like, you got to have the enforcer or just the personality. And like, we hired this great girl that she kind of floats now. So she goes from spawn to substrate to packing to retail to whatever. And we hired her particularly because, you know, past this many employees, you end up with people who call out and you're like, we need somebody who knows a little bit of everything. But she started next door at this whoopie pie factory that shall remain nameless, and everybody can figure it out. But I, you know, Kelsey and I always joke that we have like a straight up war with them that they don't even know about. And no, they fucking straight up hate us, but they're terrified of us because there's about 20 motorcycles in here and people with fat ass bodies and big ass beards riding in and out all fucking day long on sketchy ass choppers. They're terrified. They're fucking terrified. So they won't do shit except kind of just like covet our mail until we ask for it, you know? So you have to maintain some level of like this integrity, you know, of your front, because otherwise you will get screwed. And it's awesome to hear that you haven't had that, but man, we had a couple slip by where people clearly had zero intentions on paying. And
really?
Oh yeah. One was a dude down in Jersey. Fuck Jersey, by the way. Kidding. I love Jersey. Casey, Two River, you're a fantastic human. But no, yeah, it's this weird thing where you pick areas and you don't trust them. For me, it's like Minnesota and fucking Jersey.
Hey, but, I've had two people screw me over from Minnesota. Two people.
Fucking that's Minnesota, dude. I don't trust it.
So anybody for listening to this podcast from Minnesota, don't call up Cap and Stem or Earth Angel Mushrooms for blocks. All right. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm completely kidding.
Oh, totally. No, but we had this dude from Jersey who like we ended up doing a little research on to try and figure out who he was. And like, oh man, he had this great fucking story, you know, and like, he was posting shit online that we had already found, and I called him to finally get a hold of him and say, hey, look, we need to like collect on this stuff. You have never paid for these blocks. And it was a full pallet or two. And it was just one of those things. It was like a one-off sale that we really thought nothing about and just didn't happen to get paid beforehand. And I finally get a hold of the guy, and he is, I shit you not, faking a stroke. Like he fakes having had a stroke. And I was like, you're fucking joking me, right? And he was like moving really slow. He was doing it effortlessly, like, but almost too perfect, you know? Like nobody would have let this man on the phone. Let's put it that way. And he was like, you know, explaining how he's in a car accident and, you know, had these tremors, and as soon as he can, he will pay us, and so on and so forth. And I was like, okay. And I just hung up. But, you know, like days later, he's like posting photos. You know, we knew who he was online, a totally different fucking name. And he's like posting photos of the blocks, you know, asking people, you know, if they need this, that, and the other. And I was like, with a stroke? Huh? All right. You gonna go deliver those? You fucking psychopath. But they're the ones who just write off, you know? What are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. That's another good point, is you get to a point that you've done this long enough to where you don't even lose sleep.
No.
Because you know that your batting average for getting screwed over per year or per every quarter, it's not bad. And you're like, well, I lost $3,000. I'm not going to lose a wink of sleep because I know that I'm not going to take him to small claims court because it's a waste of time. Two, if I fret over this nonstop, the only person who's going to be fucked up is me.
Yeah.
So you don't even, and you try to make better decisions to how you can not do that in the future.
Totally.
But yeah,
it's true. It's hard. It's hard, man. That's the strange part about business, that you and I have been in it long enough, and I have some conversations with people who are, you know, they're just green and they're getting into it, but they haven't had that level of vulnerability tested yet. And you're like, God damn. Yeah. You realize you're a pretty good person when you just put up with it and like move on. But sometimes it's really what hurts me is like the other people who like reach out and they don't want to reach out and they just are like, I'm fucked, aren't I? And I'm like, yep. It really sucks. Like, somebody should have told you, you know. But.
Go. Hey, you should tell them. Hey, maybe you should take it to small claims court. Maybe that'll help.
That'd be the worst advice ever. Oh my goodness, man. Dude. Well, what's next for you? I mean, we can talk as little or as much as you want about this, but like, you know, you had this sort of venture and move into these Brazilian blocks and working with this farm in South America. And like what transcended because of COVID was fucking nobody's, you know, prediction necessarily, but you at one time were like balls to the wall trying to compete with Chinese logs. Or is your head still in there?
And I think well, they're still screwed up down there in Brazil.
Yeah.
So, the backstory, I guess, is, the guy down there, he's American who owns a handful of businesses in Brazil. One of them happened to be a substrate company. Well, the industry, I could talk for a long time about Brazil, but the industry down there is very, I mean, we would look at it as almost archaic compared to North America or Europe, even Asia. You know, like they're growing. It's like you step back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
And so I went down there to help them out with shiitakes. And you know, in doing the consult there and going down there multiple times, I'm like, the cost of things, labor, you know, you can compete with even Chinese blocks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we should sell these things. And so, yeah. And then, you know, COVID took place and it's all kind of on hold right now.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So that's where that's at.
That's good to know. It's still
kind of
in
in
existence, but
yeah, I mean, they're one of the biggest substrate suppliers. I think probably the biggest. I mean, it's like I don't know, 20,000 a week, 30,000 a week, or something like that of shiitake blocks. Just it's huge.
And did they have no intention of sort of breaching into the American market until you had touched base with them?
No, not at all.
That's wild.
No, they didn't realize what was taking place. You know, the whole, for people listening to the podcast, they don't know, like all of the large shiitake farms in the country are growing on the Chinese blocks.
Yeah, there's no domestic shiitake production in terms of bulk production.
Yeah, not really. And there's a couple farms, Far West, Top Hat, they're still doing their own, but as far that's it. If you get any bigger than those guys, any bigger, Monterey, South Mill, all Phillips, all of the monsters in the country are growing on Chinese blocks.
Yeah, even Joe Organic.
Yeah, it's crazy. So they're able to ship in blocks for cheaper. Yeah. And regardless of what anybody says, I've literally seen tens of thousands of them fruiting.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, they're legit. They're legitimate blocks.
Yeah.
So I've said to people before, you can talk trash about the way another country does business. You can talk trash about how they do things, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, when you look at the Kaihi blocks, they are legit, awesome shiitake blocks. So you're competing on price and you're competing on quality. So it's a multifaceted thing. And they're so huge. Kaihi's doing like millions of blocks. So it makes it hard to compete. But on another note, I think that, you know, our culture, the American culture, we do well historically when our feet are put to the fire and to compete. And I think that we need to compete. I think that we need to compete. We need to innovate, which is what we do as a culture. We have Google, you know, we have all of these things.
We got Google.
I mean, when you talk about innovation, we are innovators.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, why is it that the mushroom industry has decided to roll over? You know, why are we not doing it? We do things good.
Yeah.
Why are we not coming up with it? And, I don't know.
Yeah, mechanistically, it's really interesting, and it's got so much to do with labor, but so much to do with just automation, you know, specifically for the different manufacturers of those logs over there. It's like, it is very few people to produce those logs. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And they're making so fucking many of them. And the real issue that I see with them is just exactly what we deal with on the daily when you ship out blocks. You know, a reefer goes down or something freezes instead of refrigerates or something ebbs and flows, thaws, whatever. And the blocks are still purchased. So there's still a loss to some degree. And then there's the like snake shady side of PA, you know, mobster land trying to sling things that will not fruit to the wrong people. So I've seen both sides of it too. They're legitimate products, but mishandled, they're going to be sold as those great products that don't do shit at the same time. Yeah, I've seen it burn farms too. So no matter how fucking cheap they are, it's still a vulnerability and a risk. And I think a lot of people come back to, you know, people like us and you for that, because they're like, fuck this, man. It doesn't actually matter. You know, like I just grow less shiitakes, you know? And there's more of other varieties coming over, but shiitakes are definitely the one that hit Kennett with big one by a storm, you know?
Yep. And the West Coast and everywhere else.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. One thing that I do know is that the one thing that you and I have, Cap and Stem, Earth Angel mushrooms, the customers that we deal with, there's a relationship and like a genuine, sincere, like I want them to do good.
Yeah.
And so do you guys. When you're buying from a company like that, there is a loss of, it's more of a business transaction.
Completely.
So when you get into that realm and it's just a bit simply a business transaction, you lose something there.
Yeah.
That I think needs to be there. And with that, with the sincerity that you guys have, or that I have, or that most of the mushroom industry here has, they don't have loyalty to a company. These companies buying Chinese blocks or buying blocks from somewhere else, they don't have loyalty. It's strictly a business transaction on their end also.
Yeah.
I think that there is still hope for our industry being able to recapture that, because of these companies don't have loyalty to Kaihi. They have loyalty to that price, the bottom dollar.
Yeah.
So if we can innovate our way to be able to compete in a capitalistic fashion, we can apples to apples, we can get, if not match their price, match close to it, then we can regain all of that.
Yeah.
Straight up, you know, ingenuity, coming up with things. We got to change is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As an industry, the industry, we have to look at, we are in a world market. You know what I mean? As much as, you know, you have two sides of the political spectrum. One is, America. One is, and I won't say anything about my political affiliation or any of that, but what you do see is some people want everything made here, and they would rather pay more. But in reality, businesses, when it goes back to no one cares, the electricity company doesn't care how they get their money. They just want their money. So in turn, you end up buying Kaihi blocks.
Yeah.
Because you know that you have to pay the electric bill.
Yeah.
And when we come to the realization that, one, we are in a world market, whether we want to believe it or not, things are going all over the world. So we have to be not only good enough to recapture the American market, we have to prove that we are good enough to capture everything. That's what we're known for, is we make the American mushroom industry the industry. We do it the best. And we need everybody to think, you know, to use their brain, think outside of the box. How can we do this better, stronger, faster, and compete with these people and not just roll over?
Right. Yeah, no, it's totally
That's
true.
where I'm at.
Yeah, it's a good stance to be at and to maintain even through like 2020, you know, like this is definitely like a restructuring year for a lot of us, to be able to look at these like little loophole sort of things that we've been missing, or little tiny versions of the industry that are exploding, whether it be retail kits or whatever. But the reality comes down to it is like we're pushing two different sort of demographics. It is that like consumer cool kitschy thing, and then it is the supply chain that feeds everything on a larger Cisco size scale, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that is predominantly misunderstood, you know, in terms of who's doing what in the industry and who's supplying what. But you can look at any other form of a food distribution system, and there's always small growers and big growers. And you even look at like ranchers, you know, like look anywhere in the country where ranching is still a thing. It's more of a fucking hobby. you know, because you cannot legitimately do it. It's a lifestyle choice, and it's probably as desperate as it can get, you know, but it's something that is so old world, nobody's going to let go of it. So it would suck to like push an industry to that degree, you know, and I don't think it would get there based on the vulnerability of the product. And it's strange that it got there with something like, you know, animals, but you know, it has the potential to really like slip down that slope of, you know, being something that doesn't exist anymore, on a local scale. So I feel like if there is that motivation to like change, to innovate, and to really like just create that network that continues to grow and force one another to sort of not jeopardize what they're doing for the sake of just money, you know, to look at it as like an improvement into the overall health of humanity, you know. I mean, we're growing a pretty fucking good product, you know, we're not hurting a fuck ton of people at the end of the day. It's
that's the truth.
So I mean,
I'm with you.
It's valuable, I think, to look at the things that way. And I don't think a lot of small farms do, but you know, they'll get there. There's just so many now coming up. It's unfucking real, man.
It is crazy. It's the last year, I mean, it is just off the hook how many people are interested in mushrooms now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's mildly embarrassing, like, because I feel like I'm like losing like touch with it a little bit, and I'm like, oh my god, man, this is like I tell this story continuously, but when like a 10-year-old girl shows up to the farm with her dad and just wants to buy spawn to inoculate her substrate and says that verbatim, you're like, what? You know, like I don't. What the fuck? So there's this like the verbiage is sinking in, and the concepts are sinking in, and it's part of an educational platform on these like, you know, more specialized schools like Montessori schools or whatever to like educate kids in a different manner. And it's, I never thought much about it coming from like just public school, but it's kind of cool, you know, to watch these kids actually say like, this is a model of an industry that I could actually participate in and not feel too bad about. Cause I think that's definitely what pushes like the millennial generation down a notch. Is like they look at all the bad sides of stuff and they're like, I don't want to participate in that, so I won't, you know, instead of changing it, trying to adapt to it or motivate some sort of integral move or advancement. So it's a tough balance, man. But COVID has definitely been this like wake up call for I think a lot of us to just keep doing what we're doing, which is great. You know, no complacency.
Heck yeah.
Speaking of no complacency, are you moving pretty hard? I mean, this is great to watch these like maitake explosions like on your Instagram against like pink styrofoam walls in the background. I'm like, great color choices. But is that your push now? You really want to go towards the maitake scene?
Yeah. I mean, as far as fresh mushrooms, whenever I stopped fruiting mushrooms about a year ago, the goal was when I had no intention of stopping forever, but it was to come back and do maitake and then expand maitake and then do kings.
Yeah.
So I feel like those mushrooms, you know, a lot of people, you probably see this as well. A lot of people don't want to grow maitake. One, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Two, it takes up way more room in your colonization. So as far as the small scale industry, a lot of guys will never grow those. So that, what does that say to me is, well, there is a hole in the market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there can, if you're good at something that other people are not good at, a lot of people are not good at growing maitake, but in general, if you're good at something that other people aren't, usually you can make, I can pay the electric bill with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, so I just, and the challenge thing, you know, so the whole goal was to get back into it, and expand maitake. And not that I have them, it's one of, you know, I've done this long enough that I know that you never have full control.
No.
You only have a little bit of control. And I just feel like I'm gaining just a smidgen of control and sort of understanding what's going on right now. So I started almost a year ago, maybe it was 8 months or something like that I started literally just doing 10 maitake blocks a week. and, letting them go through the progression. And then I upped it to about 40.
Yeah.
And then from there, I feel like I have more control than I did, sort of understanding how, the who, what, when, where, why. And so then I'm going to continue to expand fruiting maitake. And then at some point down the road, I would like to do kings.
Okay.
Yeah,
kings are a tough one, man. Many people get in and get out fast. It's the same vulnerability of success, right? For kings and maitake. So you do them great, and then you're like, something fucking happened.
Something happened. Yeah. I was growing 200 pounds of kings a week. And I think I told you this, like I could get away with murder.
Yeah.
And I could spray them with water and they wouldn't blotch, and they were just luring me. They're like, "Come, TR, we have cookies. Come on over." They're letting me do stupid stuff like spraying them with a hose. Whereas for people listening that have never grown kings will straight up just demoralize you. They will eviscerate you because they're highly susceptible to blotch.
Yeah.
Well, I got away with all of this stuff that I shouldn't have been able to get away with, but whether the stars were aligned or whatever. And I was growing 200 pounds a week, week after week after week after week, just having success. And then literally like someone flipped a light switch.
Yeah.
They started blotching out.
Yeah.
Well, I was growing. They're one of the ones that you don't like to grow them with other mushrooms. You goes to the spore load and all that stuff. And I was fruiting them with other mushrooms, but I had fruited them with other mushrooms the whole time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But that doesn't mean you can get away with it forever. It just means you can get away with it till they decide that they are not going to let you get away with it anymore. And they decided to
cut you off.
Not let you get away with it. Yeah, they cut me off. And, through this whole time, you learn over time that, be good at something, not a whole bunch of things. You can't be good at a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
You can only be good at a finite amount of things. Pick them and do them well. So my thing is, I want to do maitake well. I want to do then kings well. And when you commit more time to one thing, you can get better at it. You're learning the intricacies of this. You're learning the art behind them. So when I got out of all of the fresh mushrooms, when I was fruiting them all together, when I got back into it, I'm like, I'm going to have committed rooms. They will be maitake rooms. I'm only going to fruit maitake. I'm going to gear everything towards maitake.
Yeah.
And that gives you a better chance of success. So
it does.
Hopefully.
That seclusion is what they're after, which is a really fucked up thing that so many farms get away with fruiting the gamut for as long as they do. But inherently, as you and I know, like they never get away with it forever. And it always comes back to the block producer, the spawn producer, whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's wild.
And yep. And
this is how
I've
we
gotten
know
away with
everybody
it
out there.
Yeah.
You're going to blame me or
Yeah.
TR. We talk to one another. So
yeah. You try to screw me, or if you try to talk smack on the phone about Eric to me because you think you're gaining loyalty points,
it's coming right
I'm
back
just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to tell him. But yeah,
it's challenging too, and I see it all the time, and it is a frustrating thing, especially when one farm is having like rose comb issues or another's having blotch issues, and they're like, everybody's got to be seeing this, right? This is your block's fault. And I'm like, you're the first one I've heard of so far, or so far this season or whatever. It's like, the vulnerability of the farm's fruiting setup is so much more important than they really like put into perspective. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's about to not fuck you over. It will.
Yeah.
Preventative measures and cleaning and protocols are everything, because you got to know that it's not just all coming from the precursor,
Yeah. Yep. And and you guys are doing spawn. I do a little bit of spawn. Spawn is the hardest in that because everybody wants to blame the spawn.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to blame the spawn, and it's so hard. And not that I haven't sent out spawn that was bad, or that you haven't sent out spawn, because that's Amicel, Sylvan, Lambert, they send out spawn that's bad because it's that hard. Yeah. And so it does happen, but not near as much as we get blamed for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, absolutely, man. No, and spawn has been one of those things we tried to stay away from forever, and we just couldn't do it anymore. Nobody was gonna fucking do it. And I got so many like hats off to you sort of comments, and I was like, yeah, I wish it was a hats off moment, but it's more just like nobody else is gonna do it. What the fuck? Let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. My wife's almost dead. Let's just do it. That sounds more vulgar than it is, but in all reality, it's like that's how you think of it. If you're in this fucking business, you're in it, and you cannot get out of it in that manner. You're just it's always on your fucking mind.
Yep.
It's an unreal sort of circumstance, but I think the number of farmers that have sort of seen like the ups and downs of the industry since like 2008, and like had that first encounter with psychedelics on cow patties or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
It's invasive. It's terrifyingly like I mentioned, like it's a bite. It just like all of a sudden you're bit by it and you're fucked.
And you're stuck. You're stuck. It's like cancer. Can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't beat it.
No, you can't. It just swallows you. What's the great fucking quote from Bukowski, find what you love and let it kill you.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Well, man, this has been fun. What do you want to leave people with? Because, you've got this YouTube channel and you've got this sort of presence, and people know who you are. You're the man of the master mix. Yeah. You're the man of shiitakes that occasionally rape you and call it into your life. But, what do you got for advice?
I don't know. I guess the only advice would be, one, don't think you ever have it under control. And because you don't, you only have a smidgen of control. And the most advanced growers you will come in contact with will tell you the same thing. You start off and you think you have it under control, and you don't. Don't listen to anyone who says they have it under control. Never. That should be the thing. If you go online and you hear someone speaking on how they have it so much under control with no humility, and that would have been T.R. Davis in 2015, who had it all under control, and this is how you do it, and that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Don't listen to that person. And I'm saying this about my previous self, because once you get beat up so much, then you realize, over time, is that you don't have it under control. Have some humility and know that there are people that know more than you. Try to learn from them, and look for the people who will admit that they've been beat up over time. Those are the people who know more than the guys who think they know everything. Because I was one of them until until you have your ass handed to you a handful of times, and then your whole demeanor changes.
You can usually see it in our eyes. We look pretty tired.
Yeah, we got that 1,000-yard stare. You know what I mean? You leave work like you just came out of combat.
Yeah, it's true. But it's just the CO2.
Yeah, and you don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah,
that's a big thing. There's not a lot of information out there. There's more than when we started. But don't be afraid to ask, hey, I don't know what this is doing. I don't know what this is. I don't know how to do this. You'll get a lot further ahead. I guess that's what I have to leave people with.
Yeah, I think it's important stuff, man. And I appreciate it, because I think that that's a valid thing people are scared of. We're like in this, I had it when I was a kid, right? I remember like taking the subway like into Boston and like being nervous like at this certain age about like pulling out a book that I was reading, because I was assuming that everybody was gonna like side eye me and be like, yeah, kid, I remember when I was reading that book, little fucking loser. Like it's this weird thing that's inside of you that's like, don't express what you don't know, don't show the world what you don't know. But the reality is you have to get past that and really just ask the fucking question.
Yeah, and because if you don't, you're going to just get brutalized. You're going to get brutalized. I've been there. Yeah, I've been there. I've been brutalized. I am not the same person as that version on CMGN in 2015 that would hoot and holler and all kinds of, I just thought I had it on
in the grain, motherfucker. Yeah. Yeah. I'll still never forget that. I'd be like, this dude's batshit. What the fuck is he talking about? But then again, man, we started making Spawn. Tyler looked at me like cross-eyed because I was like, what the fuck is the matter with me? I don't know why these like slants are not happening. And he's like, well, you're tightening the lid all the way down on the slant before it grows. And I was like, oh, I'm retarded. Yeah. I'd like just deprived it of life and oxygen.
Yeah.
Yep. It's so you just fucking, you do dumb stuff, you know, and you just have to like double back and be like, man, that's all right. I'll get past it eventually.
Yeah.
Do some other dumb
just
stuff.
Hopefully learn from from your mistakes.
Well, go get a beer and you, dude. Man, I appreciate the shit out of it, and we should do it again.
Yeah,
thanks
great. For having. Yeah, man, for sure, and thanks for having me on, dude.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, later. Bye.
Well, shit. That wraps up season 1 of the MycoWizards podcast. If y'all want more, yell at us. Nah, we got more. Don't worry. There's episodes being edited, so hold your fucking horses. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. You can follow or subscribe to MycoWizards wherever you go for your podcasts. Write to us at P.O. Box 897 in Gardner, Maine. If you want to follow us, head on over to Instagram and find us at MycoWizards Podcast. This episode was produced and sponsored by Maine Cap and Stem Mushroom Company, with music composed by the infamous Damon Hicks. Head on over to capandstem.com for all of your certified organic spawn and substrate needs. And until next time, later on.